The wind howled through the pine trees like a warning as the veteran stood alone on the mountain road, staring at the house everyone said was worthless. Snow crept across the broken steps. The roof sagged under years of neglect, and silence pressed so heavy it felt alive. Beside him stood his only companion, a tired old dog with scars of its own, watching the house as if it knew something the world had forgotten. What looked like the end of everything was, in truth, the beginning of a secret that would change his life forever. If you believe in the silent hero and second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that even the most forgotten souls still matter. The veteran's name was Matthew Carter, a former infantryman who returned from service carrying invisible wounds no one wanted to see. The world he came back to felt colder than any battlefield he had crossed. Jobs slipped through his fingers. Family drifted away under the weight of unspoken disappointment. And friends stopped calling when they realized he no longer fit the version of success they understood. When his grandmother passed, the only thing left of him was her old mountain house in Colorado, a place the rest of the family refused to even visit. They said it was a burden, a useless structure rotting away in isolation, and they told Matthew he should sell the land cheap and walk away. He almost listened, because at that point in his life, giving up felt easier than hoping. The drive up the mountain took hours, winding through narrow roads swallowed by trees and shadow. As Matthew climbed higher, memories of childhood flickered through his mind. Fragments of summers when his grandmother's laughter filled the air and the house felt warm despite its age. Back then, it was a place of safety, a place where he believed the world could not hurt him. Now, stepping out his rusted truck, that belief felt like a distant dream. The house stood crooked against the mountainside, windows dark, paint peeling, as if it had been waiting for someone who never came back. Matthew tightened his coat and told himself he would only stay long enough to assess the damage, then leave and never return. His dog, Max, patted ahead through the snow with quiet determination. Max had been with Matthew through everything, from sleepless nights after nightmares to days when food was scarce and hope thinner still. The dog's loyalty was steady, unquestioning. And in many ways, Max was the only reason Matthew was still standing. Inside the house, the air smelled of dust and old wood, layered with a strange stillness that made every step echo. Furniture lay draped in sheets, and family photographs lined the walls, their colors faded but faces still kind. Matthew moved slowly, overwhelmed by the weight of memory and loss pressing down on his chest. Days turned into weeks as Matthew stayed longer than planned. He patched leaks, cleared snow, and tried to make the place livable, telling himself it was temporary. Money was almost gone, and winter showed no mercy in the mountains. At night, the wind rattled the windows, and Matthew wondered if he made a terrible mistake coming here. Still, something about the house refused to let him leave. It was as if his grandmother's presence lingered in the walls, urging him to hold on just a little longer. One afternoon, while Matthew struggled to fix a broken floorboard in the back room, Max began acting strangely. The dog paced near an old wooden cabinet built into the wall, sniffing intensely, pawing at the floor as if trying to dig through solid timber. Matthew tried to call him away, assuming it was just another distraction, but Max would not stop. There was urgency in his movements, a focus that made Matthew pause. Trusting his dog had kept him alive before, so he listened now. Matthew pushed the cabinet aside with effort, revealing a section of wall that looked different from the rest. The wood was newer, the grain mismatched, almost hidden on purpose. His heart began to race as he pried at the edges, feeling resistance give way. Behind was a narrow opening, barely visible, leading into darkness. Cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of earth and metal. Matthew hesitated, fear and curiosity colliding, then grabbed a flashlight and stepped inside, Max close at his side. The hidden room was larger than he expected, carved into the mountain itself. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with old boxes, journals, and sealed metal cases coated in dust. Matthew's hands trembled as he opened the first box, revealing neatly bound documents, stock certificates, and deeds bearing his grandmother's name. As he explored further, the truth unfolded slowly, like a story she had waited decades to tell. His grandmother had been more than the quiet woman everyone dismissed. She had been a shrewd investor, a protector of family wealth she never trusted anyone else to handle. The mountain house was not worthless at all. It was a vault, a safeguard for assets now valued in the hundreds of millions. Matthew sat on the cold stone floor, overwhelmed, as Max rested his head on his knee. Tears blurred his vision, not from greed or excitement, but from the realization that his grandmother had believed in him when no one else did. She had left everything to him, hidden it carefully, and trusted that when the time was right, he would find it. In that moment, the house no longer felt abandoned. It felt alive, purposeful, and full of meaning. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of verification, legal work, and quiet disbelief. Matthew moved carefully, guided by advisors who confirmed the legitimacy of the documents and the staggering value of what he now owned. News spread quickly once the truth surfaced, and suddenly people who had once ignored him wanted to reconnect. Distant relatives reached out with apologies that felt hollow, and old acquaintances congratulated him as a success had always been expected. Matthew listened politely, but kept his distance. Wealth had not erased the years of struggle or the loneliness he had endured, and he was determined not to lose himself now. Instead, Matthew focused on rebuilding not just a house, but his sense of purpose. He restored the mountain home with care, preserving its soul while making it warm again. He invested in local communities, funded veteran support programs, and created shelters for service animals, inspired by Max's unwavering loyalty. He understood what it meant to be forgotten, to feel discarded by the world, and he refused to let others face that darkness alone. As winter thawed into spring, the mountains seemed to breathe again. Snow melted from the roof. Sunlight filled the rooms, and laughter returned in quiet ways. Matthew spent mornings on the porch with Max, watching the horizon glow, feeling a peace he had not known in years. The house that once symbolized failure now stood as proof that worth is not always visible on the surface. Some treasures are hidden, waiting for someone brave enough to stay when everyone else walks away. Just before the ending, take a moment and comment below with your thoughts on this story, and share whether you believe that loyalty, patience, and second chances can truly change a life. Matthew never forgot where he came from or how close he had been to giving up. He knew that without Max, the secret would have remained buried, and his life might have followed a very different path. In honoring his grandmother's L,